What can we say? What can we say? What can we say?
Well, the obvious is that man right
Hold on,
there,
hey,
number 4.
hold on, check your mic. Can you move the TV real quick? I'm gonna do mine. Hold on.
Oh, is it good?
Hold on, one second.
All right. Oh, I can't wait to hear what these jokers say about that.
Let me check. Let me check the echo. You still echoing over there?
No, you're good. It's all good.
Oh man.
Seattle, man, they were thinking this was the playoffs or something, the way they were acting out there.
You
That
would
kind
have.
of.
Oh, is your TV on? Hey, mute your TV.
All right. All right.
Let's see if we run on through. You good? There we go.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, that was one of those games where you can't even really you can't even put into words. It was
We just caught Seattle at a bad time. They've lost 2 in a row. This was going to be their 3rd loss.
Yep.
They're in the playoff hunt. We just call it, if there was another team playing them tonight, I feel like it would have been the same outcome, or they would have won Seattle.
Yep. It was one of those where you're sitting there trying to figure out why exactly are we all night. This was one of those nights we just like one step off the entire time. But hey,
I mean, 160 yards and penalties, that don't help.
One thing anybody can say, Dak Prescott was on his job tonight, man.
I don't know who that man is, but he is possessed. I mean, I know who he is personally.
as the resident Dak Prescott president, fan club president.
Balling, and he ain't just balling in a way that he's just like the quarterback sneak that almost got, or the read option. I mean, where he was flexing on a boy close to the end zone. He's like, oh, this is, I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna carry the team on my back in these moments. And then he's doing the shrug,
Pretty much letting it be known. Hey, you know what I said? This was one of those games where you're watching Dak and obviously we see he's a completely different quarterback now. We're talking about a guy like having control of the team, but this was one of those games that you literally needed every drop, pretty much every drop of what he had tonight, because it was
of Dak. Yeah,
we were not in the mix of where we're trying to. Oh man, that was one of those games.
You don't see it too often where we need the defense to, or where we need Dak to save a CD drop or a defensive nonstop, or whatever.
Yep.
In the last handful of games, or especially this one, it's such a rare thing to say Dak has to save so and so, or Dak has to save someone, and it's like,
yep,
you can you get a sense from the timeline as well that still a lot of our people aren't used to seeing Dak have to actually carry the load because he's been balling, and if anything bad happens, it's like, oh shit, we need Dak to help.
We need him to be exactly
what
happy. Exactly.
He's earned it. He's earned it, and with everything that he goes through, it's like, man, he's earned it. And the D, I don't even want to discuss the defense yet because they have burned up. They were this close tonight to being cut off in this household, man. Because they're terrible.
Hey, I said this was one of those games where you looking at it, I'm like, literally every single player that I beat my chest about. It was like you see all night everybody having some kind of like deficiency. All night long. It's like, man, there's no way. I'm sitting here watching the game and we're like, first off, of course we know what Deron Bland has been doing. But this one, of course, you know what? I was telling Lauren, I said this is one of those nights where you're watching the game, and this is one of those games where it's good for him in the long. I'm talking in the grand scheme, because when you're watching it play, you got to keep him humble, because at the end of the day, you got to remember it doesn't matter what you did last week or the week before. Every single week, somebody's coming to test you.
Right.
Every single week, man.
I just don't like how they were. It seemed like they were. Like, it got to the point where they were just setting him up on purpose. The Cowboys, like, okay, he gave up a couple huge plays and a touchdown. Like, okay, let's get him some help. Let's not. He don't need to stay humbled the whole
game. I was saying, yep.
Okay, come on.
Yep. I said the same thing, because I said for one thing. Also, we're talking about a kid that's so young. I said, you don't want to completely deteriorate his confidence off of one game. I said, so at some point, it's not like, hey, we don't believe in you. We don't think you're one of those guys at the end of the day. But it's like, hey, look, tonight they have your number. we can't let this pretty much be one of the detriments, like I said, because you don't want this going in the next week, the week after that, where he's thinking, hey, you know what? Dang, can I play in this league? I was like, put Malik Hooker over the top. Let somebody just let him know, hey, look, you have some help. I said, I'll give something up to the tight ends at this point. You just want to let it be known, hey, you can play this game, but we're going to give you a little help tonight, man.
And, I saw this is our third game in 13 days. So, I'm sure there's a little bit of wear and tear. And now we got to, we don't play again until next Sunday. So we got a couple of days extra rest. So, I'm not worried about that. But just this game was one of those like, oh, this Seattle team was ready to play. Oh, okay. So now we got to step it up. And it just took us a while to get everything under our feet. You know what I'm saying?
That's all it was, man. Yeah, this is one of those, like I said, we're pretty much in the mix of, at this point, we're just looking for wins. It doesn't really matter how we get the wins at this point. We're looking for wins because, of course, you're watching national media. What's the number one thing everybody's talking about? Can the Cowboys win against 500 and better teams, or teams over 500, whatever it is? And I said, go ahead. I'm listening. Go ahead.
Spade is a spade. You can call Seattle whatever you want, but the fact is they were above 500. Yep. They're in the playoff contentions. They're like the 6th or 7th seed. Yep. They're there. Yep. And we beat them. So in one night, we killed 2 birds with 1 stone. But it's okay. Now can they be consistent? Philly next week will humble. There's always going to be something. So I don't even try to entertain that kind of stuff. But we did what we had to do tonight. Dak showed up in primetime. Dak was clutch.
Yep.
When he had to save us. Seattle above 500, Seattle in playoff contention. People were like, oh, they're barely beating Seattle. Seattle is, we needed the Seattle game because they're in our conference for one, seeding, everything, Yep.
So, hold on one second. Hold on.
And don't let these Amazon Prime people fool you. At halftime, they were all over the Seattle's jock. They were all over Seattle's jock at halftime. Now they're backpedaling like crazy.
Man, everybody's doing the mix, trying to figure out what exactly.
You can't. Dak is not. If you're talking about Dak after this game, you were talking about him about MVP. He had no interceptions. He had no fumbles. He had 3 touchdowns. He was dealing.
One of those games, like I said, you're looking at what Dak. Let me find out exactly. I don't want to miss anything. Misquoted, because I know what Dak Prescott tonight. Gonna check him out. We're looking at what? Dak, 29 or 41, 299, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And although we're talking about the O-line didn't even play a perfect game. It wasn't even a perfect game because you saw so many times broken plays. It was him just using his legs. Especially, what was it? I think he has a sack going down on him. What was it? It was a tap. Did he say it was a tap, I think? Has him pretty much completely wrapped up. Breaks out of it, gets after Jalen Tolbert.
Yes. Steele got worked that play, and then Dak, had to do the Houdini, and that's when he hit Tolbert for the first down. But, I mean, as soon as the ball was snapped, Tolbert's man just was already on top of Dak.
Pinned them on through, man. I think tonight, hold on, let's see. I Talk Game 247 live. We are now tapping in after the Dallas Cowboys defeated the Seattle Seahawks. Final score, Dallas Cowboys 41, the Seattle Seahawks 35. This was not a pretty game. Let's call it that. I'm not going to say it was a pretty game. But we're talking about in the NFL, any given Sunday. I say it all the time, any given Sunday. We're going through the weekly previews of whatever team we're facing. I'm going through that. It's like, hey, look, it's any given Sunday. You can't even look at the schedule because we already saw what happened to against the Arizona Cardinals. Of course, we run an entirely different scheme than we were early in the season, more aggressive, more direct approach. But I'm like, in the NFL, because like we talk about every single time, if you're watching national media, what's the number one thing you're always saying anyway? Who are they playing? Who are they playing? Who are they playing? And the simple fact of the matter is, if everybody could beat all the bad teams by 30 points, then everybody could. But at the end of the day, you're looking. I say at the end of the day, you also, like everybody's talking about when you're watching the whatever morning shows you're watching. That no one thing they ever say. Both teams are getting paid. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
The better teams just have more good players. That's the only difference. The better teams usually just have a bigger collection of good players. So I'm like, at the end of the day, you're still playing against guys that are very capable that can get the job done anyway. So I'm like, I don't ever even get into the mix of where we're talking about a specific crowd or this team is better than this team. I'm like, at the end of the day, you do understand the better teams are going to be in the playoffs. That's who you're going to be facing when you're talking about getting on later into the season and getting in the postseason. But you're talking about beating the Seahawks. What Seahawks now? The Seahawks with a record of 6-6. Geno Smith tonight, 23 of 41, 334 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, no sacks. Did not get sacked at all. This is one of those games. It was, and you know what I said? We were watching. If you're watching social media and you're paying attention to all that stuff, you're seeing people. Where's Michael Parsons? Where's Michael Parsons? This is what I'm talking about when we talk about the way that people talk about basketball. I mean, just not basketball. We're talking about football. People talk about football nowadays. It's like more in the hot takes and the shock value. Because if you're watching the games, Michael Parsons is putting his print all over the game. Right. It doesn't always show up on the stat sheet, especially the number one thing we're talking about just QB pressure. We're talking about breaking down the pocket. How many times you saw Geno Smith have to get out of the pocket? But our DBs were burnt toast tonight for whatever reason. So it's like, that's what we're talking about. Or especially, go back to the first half. How many times we see Geno Smith getting the ball out of his hands in a couple seconds, but he's letting it fly downfield? Somebody's already breaking open or somebody's just making a play. We see DK Metcalf making a play on the ball multiple times, in Jack Smith and Jigba. We're going through all that. It's like you can't. I don't ever get into the stats because again, if you played football, if you know football, all that stuff, you watching the games and you can see guys make an impact where they're throwing up on the stats. Just talk about especially what DeMarcus Lawrence. Biggest thing we're talking about, a guy that is not necessarily going to be having. We're talking about getting that contract, of course, years ago. He's not a guy who's going to ever get you 10 sacks a year consistently. But we're talking about somebody, and especially our run defense. What was the big stop on that? I was talking to Lauren about it. I said, you go back to even last year in the Texans game, breaking through on the goal line. I'm like, these are small plays that you don't even pay attention to if you're just watching the stat sheet. You're watching the box score. So I'm like, I don't ever fall in love with the stat sheet watching and the scoreboard watching because at the end of the day, I'm like, win the games because at the end of that, that's the only thing that matters. So
win the games against above 500 teams, against teams who are in the playoff contention, which at the end of the day, you can break it down however you want, but that was the Seattle team tonight. They're in the playoff hunt, and they still are.
Yep.
They were above 500. They played us tough, so you could say, hey, that Seattle team is not a bad team because they're not. They got playmakers.
They're not a bad team.
They're fast ballers.
Yeah.
Seattle's a good team.
Yeah.
And they showed it tonight.
That's solid.
We just prevailed.
Yep.
And we prevailed by the skin of our teeth in a sense. Our offense, I have no quarrel with the offense except for the 4th down deep pass. And if you want to do that at the end of the game, cool. But I would have went for it on 4th down and make Geno go 85 yards.
Exactly what I call. That's why I said when you're looking at the Saints, it's like we're talking about just Seattle being 6-6. When you go into that concept, especially we're talking about what are they in the NFC West. We already know what the San Francisco 49ers are ahead of them. So I'm like, you have that competition. Especially what they got pretty much beat down on Thanksgiving. What I think was on Thursday night against the 49ers. But I'm like, when you're playing against a team like that, they have some talent. And if you're not coming out ready and locked and loaded, and again, we're not used to. I think when we went down in the first quarter, that was the first time we have been down at home the entire season so far. So we're used to the Cowboys coming out here and being the aggressive team, being the team that shows up from the jump. But and then normally, like I said, that's what I was tweeting about it. I said, look, this defense, if defense can just fall into a couple stops tonight, offense could take control of this game. We didn't get that at all. Honestly, until what that last, I will give them like those a couple stops in the fourth quarter because they were big stops and we needed them. So it is crunch time. That's when you have to make those plays. But this is one of those games where you're not even looking at the stat sheet. You're not even looking at. You don't even want to look at anything after this game. It's like, look, we snuck out of here with a win. Focus on the Eagles. Then about a week and a half, something like that. I think. About a week and a half.
Yeah.
So
Dak's at the podium now, so I'm sure I hope he's giving them an earful.
Oh man,
much needed for that guy.
We'll check it out. Dak Prescott is like I said tonight. Dak Prescott 29 of 41, 299 yards, barely missing the 300-yard mark. 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Once again, let's talk about the 0 interceptions. I said my biggest thing I always talk about when you're watching Dak Prescott is when you see him start to pat the ball in the pocket. That's when I get a little nervous because to me, that's when Dak is not just free flowing anymore. He's not playing off instinct. That's when you see him kind of he's now in that sense of where you could tell he's thinking a little bit too much. And I've always said since Dak, especially just coming out of Mississippi State, especially most people watching him being a Heisman finalist and all that stuff. You watch him being drafted to this team. And I always said Dak Prescott plays his best with he's just able to go off instinct. That's why we always see him. We get in these 2-minute drills, we get in the halftime drills right before at the end of a game. That's why he was having all these comeback wins early in his career, because we're talking about a guy that he loses. I guess he loses that simple thought process when he can just go out there and play easy pitch and catch.
Right.
Obviously, and then what tonight? Let's talk about Jake Ferguson. I believe 6 catches, 77 yards, 1 touchdown. That's why I always call him Travis Kelce light, because I'm like, of course, he's still growing. And I mean, what's Jake Ferguson? Second year, third year, second year?
Yeah, second. And the touchdown he had at the end was huge, and he had that big. It was towards the end of the game. I forget which drive it exactly was, but
I think
he got tackled around the 10-yard line.
Yeah.
He had it was like a 14-yard run.
Little bang up, yeah.
Yeah, and then the hurdle. Ferguson is coming around. Yep. He just has a drop or two.
Yeah.
But Ferguson is getting very good, and not just good in a sense. He talks the talk too. He brings the juice.
Hey, I said at the end of the day, any player on this team, because again, you saw Dak tonight chirping a lot. We know CD talks a lot, but I'm like, yeah, you see Jake Ferguson. Those are my players, because at the end of the day, we're talking about when you get to the end of the season and these tougher matchups, and we're talking about playoff seeding and trying to prepare for that. And then you're looking at also when you get into the postseason, you need dogs. I say I want dogs on my team, because at the end of the day, those are the guys that are more liable to you can rely on to step up in these big moments. Especially like you see guys that are not scared of the moment. You see guys like, especially like you said, even in the end zone touchdown catch by Jake Ferguson in the fourth against Jamal Adams. You have got to be able to show that you are one of those playmakers. I said, and Jake Ferguson is. I don't want to say like he's even growing into himself yet, because we still, I don't think we've even seen the best of a Jake Ferguson yet. Like I said, we're still talking about a guy still year 2, like we said, going into year 3, 4, 5. You want to see him get those moments, start to stack those moments now, because that's where you're going to start to be able to build and start to see that you are like an actual playmaker in this league, man.
Right, and I'm just happy. Seattle, you were kind of getting the sense, that Seattle was starting to try to punk us out a little bit, like, oh yeah, we got y'all boys, and then when Jamal Adams kind of pushed Ferguson's face mask there, and then Ferguson comes back and does the thing, and then he scores directly on Adams, and he looks at him, and then Dak does the flex on the linebacker. Like, we got guys who, whether they're playing good or not, they're gonna talk the talk. We just want to be on the winning side.
You want to be on the winning side of that, exactly. That's what I said. You know what? I was like, this is one of those. Of course, when the game's going on, especially talking about real fans, we're watching the game. It's easy to get in your nerves. Like you get mad, you get upset. It's like, okay, look, this guy. I'm like, at the end of the day, like I said, when you're looking at the mix, let's talk about Tony Pollard. 20 carries, 68 yards, a touchdown. It wasn't the most gaudy game for a Tony Pollard, what we've seen just from his skill level, the burst. But late, it seemed like as the game went on, you start to see that fire a little bit more. You start to see him get his legs underneath him a little bit more.
Yeah, his last running play, the biggest one, he hit that whole hard truck old boy. It's like, this is what we need more of him to do,
because this is closing time,
Yeah, he's still kind of, every little bit going sideline.
It seems like he's timid. Yeah, he's still running timid sometimes, as if like again, that's what I said. To me personally, when we're looking at this line, the biggest thing is the O-line is still a work in progress, because we're talking about so many veterans, even going back to Tyron Smith and then going Zach Martin. Obviously, we know those are the long-standing guys. Terrence Steele hasn't played up to his contract extension yet, up to this point overall at all. Then I'm like, when you're watching him, I believe was it second quarter? I believe when he pretty much bites completely on the outside rusher instead of the lineman, especially the rusher right into his in his face mask. And Tony Pollard kind of gets left out to dry a little bit. Like Zeke, if anything, we can go back to the year. Zeke was gonna be another extra blocker for this team, if anything. And Tony Pollard is obviously not at that level of pass blocking from the running back position. So I'm like, you cannot leave guys like that out to dry, especially we need Dak Prescott healthy for as long as we can. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on with the, again, and I'm still trying to give him some grace, because I'm like, he's coming back from torn ACL. So I'm like, you have to still kind of let him get his feet wet, because there's no way, I'm going to say football especially. Football is one of the sports you can't really mimic any of the athleticism. You can't mimic any of the physical things that you have to do, like training, off-season training, lifting weights. You're not doing anything physical like football, actual football, contact football, unless you're actually being out there on the field. So I was like, this is one of those years you just hoping is not going to be anything that's going to be long-term. hurting this team. But it's like
it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like other years, and okay, here we go. This year's different. But I mean, seriously, like the things that are happening outside of our little tiny, mishaps like Steele and Jordan Lewis or whatever. It doesn't really feel like we're gonna collapse. I mean, the defense, we didn't even collapse. The defense
didn't even show up. Defense,
right?
Yeah.
So like, we're not at the point where it's like, okay, we're either gonna come back, or we're gonna take the lead into the end, and the defense is gonna give it up, or the defense is gonna make a stop, which they did.
Yep.
It just doesn't feel like we're gonna collapse. It doesn't feel like one and done to me, especially if we can stick with that like the the 3, 4, 5 seed-ish, and we stay away from the Seattles and the Phillies. I think we can handle everyone else. We can handle the Saints. We can handle Seattle if we meet them again. The Lions, I think the Lions, they'll have a collapsing moment if we have to play the Lions. So
I think we have in week 15, I believe, week 15.
Like I just don't. Yeah, they just show the schedule, and of course Philly, Buffalo, Miami. So those games are gonna be crazy. I don't anticipate us beating Miami at all, just because our defense. There's no way our defense can stop any of those guys.
Well, you know what I think it is, honestly. Like I said, I'm also not gonna get into like the like I'm down on everybody, because I'm like, at the end of the day, we always look up. Everybody is not gonna be able to show out every single week, because if that was the case, you would have lockdown defenses every single week. Because I'm like, look at who some of the better defenses are this year and this season in general. I'm like, you got, like, especially the Cowboys. We haven't given up too many games where we got smacked around outside of the 49ers game. I'm talking where we got just completely where you're like, there was no chance of a stop. This was the closest to that I think we've had all year. In the last recent weeks, of course, like playing against like this Seattle team. At some point, I was like, I found myself just like begging just for somebody to do something. And like you said, like we said already, just starting off, DaRon Bland, this is one of those games where it wasn't great for him, obviously, but it was good to. That's it was needed, yeah. It was good. It was good to see him just be able to keep his head in the game, because that's what I said when we're talking about a DaRon Bland, when you're talking about a Stephon Gilmore. Obviously, they're not Trayvon Diggs, and that's one of those things. I think still people are underestimating the loss of what that is, because I think we've gotten kind of mixed up in what DaRon Bland has done. But you go back to week 1, of course, we playing the Giants and Daniel Jones, whatever Daniel Jones was the quarterback. My thought process was always Trayvon Diggs. Although you could, again, look at DaRon Bland, look at how he plays the cornerback position. Look at how, again, he goes after the ball. He's a big ball hawk from the outside boundary corner position now. But I'm like, when you look at that, Trayvon Diggs to me still is even a step above. I'm talking about healthy Trayvon Diggs is a step above that, because he's the one that literally will go get the ball. Like DaRon Bland will go get the ball. Trayvon Diggs will go get the ball. And I think we would have had a little bit more success tonight if you had Trayvon Diggs out there predominantly guarding DK Metcalf. Because I feel like I feel good. Obviously, he's like a little, to me, he's more rangy of an athlete. And also, he's a little bit taller anyway. And I think his feet are a little bit quicker. Now, DaRon Bland has quick feet. But I'm like, I just think Trayvon Diggs, a healthy Trayvon Diggs, obviously, is just the better overall cornerback. I'm talking when we're talking about just athleticism. So I'm like, I don't see us if we had those issues. We know injuries happen. Like, you can't really account for that, because sometimes you're going to lose players that you didn't count on losing going into the season. But not having Trayvon Diggs, I'm like, still, I don't see us in the mix of one of these games where you see DK Metcalf just going off and we don't feel like we can do anything about it. And then you see, luckily, Tyler Lockett didn't really get off too much. And then I think with that late ball in the fourth quarter, kind of sneaks up on him a little bit. And I was like, I was saying when watching the game, I was like, that ball got on him a little bit hotter than you could tell than he thought it was going to. And then you're looking at Jackson Smith and Jigba. I'm like, you're watching that. Now you have a DaRon Bland predominantly guarding that guy. And then you have you know what I mean? So I'm like, we still don't have all our pieces. And of course, that's talking about way into the future next year and getting him healthy and all that stuff. But I'm like, I think this team still was built for something different. And I think now this is one of those games where it's showing us they're still adjusting at some points, because now you're looking up and now we don't even have LVE, and whatever you think LVE was as a linebacker. If anything, I always said, even of course we saw what all pro rookie type season, and of course after he started getting injured, the neck injuries, all that stuff, they start piling up. He's not that guy anymore. But then when you look it up, he's still, I always said, LVE is still one of those lunch pail kind of players. Like, he's gonna know where to be though, and again, and you're not gonna notice that you don't have him until he's not out there. You know what I mean? And to me, that's what I felt like we lost a little bit. Of course, Marquise Bell being moved over from safety to linebacker, he's still underweight a little bit. He's undersized when we talk about these physical players. And you could tell sometimes now when guys start getting out in screens and when they start kind of these outside edge runs, and you see 300-pound lineman coming in and putting a body on him, he can't really compete unless he's able to shoot the gap and get through real quick. He disengaged real fast. He would find ourselves in some trouble. So,
well, let's hope we can call this game the Shaq Leonard, game.
Hey,
and hopefully he's watching and sees, and then he'll take Marquise Bell, and then Marquise Bell can drop back again.
And or at least to me, it even become like one of those, just like those hybrid players, kind of like the same. That way we use J-Ron Hurst a little bit. Like we'll move you into the box a little bit. We kind of let you float around a little bit because this is one of those, man. Yeah, we have to just kind of, like you said, hopefully this is one of those, the Shaq Leonard game. Like we need you to come just solidify this thing. We have the pieces. We need somebody to solidify.
Watching the game, he should be excited. I mean, we had we came back and won, and Dak is there, and our defense, they saved it at the end, so that should have got it pumped up. But he would feel a need, honestly.
Yep, a big need because even though I think Rashaan Evans got a little bit more playing time. You see him downfield, pass interference again, and you can't really how many times a linebacker playing in pass coverage,
that far down.
Yeah. So I'm like, when you get to that, we're now trying to get our same. I think you're trying to get guys comfortable, and I'm like, we're still kind of in that mix of it's a work in progress. But I'm like, luckily you were able to see guys like say DeMarcus Lawrence make some plays in this game. Still, you were able to see guys like Donovan Wilson was the big stop on fourth down, I believe. I'm like, that was huge. And I said, for a game, to me, especially just former playing and then playing defense, you're playing things like that, you're watching guys and you be like, football is like this sometimes. It's going to be, you're not always going to have those games where everything's going right or you're not missing tackles or guys are catching touchdowns on you, whatever it is, or guys are breaking tackles. You got to stick with it, especially defense. That's what it is most of the time. Just stick with it. And I think I was saying that during the game. I'm like, look, the biggest thing I started having an issue with when it came to Dan Quinn is why exactly are you playing 10 yards off every single play? I can't stand football like that because at the end of the day, guys are going to go ahead.
And I don't really recall where that came in. I don't feel like that's ever really been an issue. This season it has more than one game, but tonight especially, it's like 3rd and 2, and they're hitting a poster out in the middle of the field wide open for a first down.
No effort.
Luckily Smith and Jigba dropped that one, but that was a touchdown. Bland, one-on-one, no help over the top. He was gone.
Yep.
We got really lucky there. Okay. It did pay off at the end. We had the 4th down stop. Seattle's last play that play was obviously a busted play. Nobody touched Micah
at all.
It was too easy.
Yeah.
So, but of course, we're gonna take it. But they really dropped the ball on that one.
Zero blitz. Use a jailbreak, and it's like, look, I'm hopefully we'll get somebody there before they're able to complete a pass. I'm like, that's what one of those was. And that's what one of those were. And I'm like, when you watching, like I said, going back to the simple fact, like I said, even just Dan Quinn calling, I won't say a passive type defensive secondary just scheme, the way we're running it. I'm never a fan of taking the game out of your players' hands. And to me, I feel like that's what you do. When you're talking about DBs getting beat, you're talking about your safeties, your corners, whatever it is, giving up plays. And then when you just start completely playing 10 yards off, 10 yards off, 10 yards off, or 5 yards, what I'm saying, where you just pretty much giving up easy completions. And you saw, that's why Geno Smith, that's why he started getting himself rolling a little bit, because what he started doing is he looks up and he has an easy completion in about a couple seconds. I can just dump this off right here, get an extra few yards, especially we're talking about guys running after the catch. I'm like, so Dan Quinn, my biggest issue, like I said, was when I felt like when he took the game out of the players' hands, because again, you're going to get beat sometimes at cornerback. What you have to do, let them show you they have some heart. Let them show you they still have that wherewithal to get back in the mix of the game. That's why that Deron Bland actually breaking on that ball. And we're talking about all hands. It wasn't one of those let it come to your chest and you kind of just happen to be in the right place. That was a go get them interception. I was like, those are the plays that you love to see, because again, he could have easily been down on himself the rest of the game. He could have easily just kind of mailed it in and been like, hey, that's not my night. They just couldn't cook.
The interception, I definitely think, helped get his confidence back.
Get that roll back in, yep.
And a lot of the stuff, I just don't think it was his fault. Quinn wasn't exactly helping him out
at all. And, honestly, go ahead, I'm listening.
You have a whole week and a half, pretty much, for Seattle. Whatever this tape, this is a game plan you don't want to look at. I don't want Philly. Philly's going to see this and be like, oh, there's going to be hundreds of routes. So you need to completely scrap whatever that game plan was tonight, because you don't want to take that when the Philly game comes around. And you don't want to do none of that stuff with Philly, because it's going to be pitch and catch all day.
Yep. See,
I want that game plan gone.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go throw it in the throw it in.
Yeah, because stuff was just way too easy.
Yep.
For Seattle, DK had freaking 3 touchdowns, 150 yards plus, and you don't want AJ Brown, who's like DK. They have Donovan Smith,
just physical, big physical receiver.
It's like whatever that game plan was tonight for the defense, you got to get rid of it. You hope, and then they have San Francisco to work on, so you hope they kind of bust them in the mouth a little bit.
Yep.
But they're going to watch that film from this game and be like, oh, yes, this defense is worse than the other time. So when they come in the game, I want them to see something completely different and be thrown off. Yep. Maybe that'll get the advantage,
See, and crazy enough, when I'm even going through there, I'm sitting here and watching. It's like, hey, when you have that, I guess that mindset where, like I said, defense is not really playing that well, obviously. But then you have that mindset of when you're not playing that well defensively, but then at the same time, like I said, you have guys like Deron Bland. You have, like I said, you making plays, I guess, situational opportunistic plays. When you have guys still doing that, now you're gonna have to look at the game and figure out. To me, this ain't one of those games where, like I said, I feel like any other team could even sit there and watch it and try to duplicate this, because there was some plays that, even going back and we talk most of, I'll say football especially more so we're talking about quarterbacks that do have the arm talent. Like Geno Smith, I think they said, year 11? We do know he bounced around. He's been with some teams anyway. So I'm like, you have a Geno Smith still. He is a guy that you're going to be able to say he still has arm. He has the arm talent to make the plays. Let's say what makes good quarterbacks and bad quarterbacks? It's the consistency, or average quarterbacks, because the consistency. So I'm like, when you're watching them, Geno Smith can make these throws. And when you're watching the game early on, I was saying it kind of compared me, if you watch that the 73-yard touchdown catch by DK. You watch that. That literally reminded me exactly of the Jets game. I think, was it Garrett Wilson, Stephon Gilmore in drag coverage, and the ball is literally put in the one place it has to be. I'm like, I don't know how many times Zach Wilson is hitting that throw just on a regular basis, and I'm like, when you watch that ball from Geno Smith, now Geno Smith, again, he has the arm talent. It's like consistency is his thing when you're going to be talking about it. But I'm like, he put that ball in the one place it had to be. And Deron Bland, obviously, he's smaller than DK Metcalf as a just physicality-wise anyway in their body frame. So I'm like, when you watch that, to me, I feel like when Geno put that ball right where it was, obviously there's a bust in deep safe. There's no protection. There's no safety valve. There's nothing. It's gone. That ball's going to the end zone. I'm like, I felt like once they hit that, it kind of just took some pressure off, because you didn't have to work for it. You know what I mean? There was no working for that touchdown. If they feel like if we would have scored, because I think we kicked the field goal on the first drive, and you end up scoring 3, and then somehow you get a stop, you force them to stop, whatever it is. I don't care if you let them get to the 50 and they end up punting or whatever they're going to choose to do. Just don't get it. I don't feel like they would have had that same confidence as the game went on. I feel like that kind of just opened up the what they call the floodgates for them. And once they hit that, now you see them take another shot at Deron Bland, and then DK Metcalf right down the sideline. So I'm like, this is just one of those when it rains, it pours games. It's not anything I'm going to sit here and watch. I'm like, oh, man, I feel we're going to do this every single week. Now, you get about a week and a half off. You do know what the Eagles are. You're going to get to watch them play a little bit. If you do come out next week, not next week, yeah, what about a week and a half? Next game, I'm going to say, next game, and you still look like you just out of place. You still look like no physicality. Because, honestly, I will say that the O-line for the Seahawks is not trash. Like, I don't think they're trash, but they're not anything that you should be like, we should be getting dominated the way we did the entire game. And especially not with the talent we have on this line. So I'm like, we were getting dominant. I'm like, you didn't see anything out of guys like Dorrance Armstrong. You didn't see anything out of anybody really early on in the game. Also, Diggy Zul was kind of hit and miss a little bit. And then he, obviously, again, as everybody else got comfortable as the game went on. That's when you start to see more. Yeah, they start to come around. But I'm like, watching that, I don't feel like that's anything. Again, we do know the Eagles have a good O-line. That's clear. But I'm like, I'm saying there are only a few teams that you can look up and say the Cowboys might have some trouble, or we're gonna have to work hard for that. I'm like, I don't feel like the Seahawks were on that level. So this is one of those games you're gonna look at. You're gonna take a couple good things that you can, more so offensively. You're gonna take a couple of those things and then scrap the rest. It's like, hey, look, we tried a couple things, or we did this that we don't normally do.
Yeah, don't do it again.
Don't do it again.
Philly, if you want to do it, save it for somebody else. And for whatever reason, we show up against Philly.
Yeah.
We should have won the game.
Yeah.
The first time we drove down the field, the last series of the game
Get
against
to the
Philly.
5-yard line.
Yeah, and then the penalties pushed us back, and it was just a nightmare after that.
Yeah.
But we were there. I mean, we took them down to the end. We drove down the field, 5 plays, boom. So, it's hard for me to be like, oh, Philly, but I don't want us on defense to play like that against Philly, but I'm not going to be like,
hey, I always say, as much as we can't stand the Eagles, I'm like, look, I always say at the end of the day, I'm like, you got to keep it real. Like, we watching exactly, we know exactly. That's why I don't even get into it, because we always know. I'm like, it's not like the Eagles are blowing anybody out. I think that to me, personally, that's just what keeps me not fearful.
Every game they've been in is close. I feel like the 49er game will be close, and I hope the 49ers can, get it on them.
Yeah.
But if the 49ers can beat them, and then we beat them, then we're tied for first. So
and then get the top. And I said, and what's going to kill us, though, is exactly what we're going to need, because, again, it's that Cardinals loss. It's us losing that game, because now what we're talking about, I think we're sitting at 3. Is it 3 conference losses now? So we're sitting at 3 conference, and that's where you start getting real. That's where you start getting in the mix. We're talking about playoff seeding, teams having the same records. That's why it was very important for us to get this win against the Seahawks, because like they were talking about during the game, the wild card seeding is so jam packed right now. Nobody can get themselves out of the mix. So a couple bad weeks, and you find yourself almost sitting out of it. So.
All right. Well, you want to trust me. I want to beat Miami or beat Buffalo or beat both, and of course beat Philly.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, losing to Miami and Buffalo, it's not going to move me either way, because they're in the AFC. It ain't going to affect, it'll affect the overall record, but it's not really going to affect anything in the conference.
I want you guys to understand, I do not agree with him at all. Literally, no. You know what it is? I said, to me personally, I do. And it is completely separate reason. I want us to go out there and show up like majorly, and which is unfortunate that Diggs is not going to play this game, because I kind of want to see that Diggs versus Stephon Diggs, Trayvon Diggs little matchup battle or whatever. But to me, I do want to see us take advantage of the team like the Buffalo Bills, because for sure, one thing to me, it's more so like a personal thing. We can get to what Dak Prescott is being with the plays he's made this season, but I'm like, when you're watching that, I want these quarterbacks that have not done anything outside of a flash. Again, we could talk about, of course, Josh Allen took the Bills to the AFC Championship game a few years ago, whatever. I'm like, when you get to that, of course, you're going to get a little bit more equity. People are like, Josh Allen has the big arm. He can make these plays. They've had some good playoff wins, which is big. Of course, at the end of the day, you want to win in the playoffs. That's the whole point. You can do whatever you do during the regular season if you don't win in the play. Eagles fans, they can talk about how much they love getting to the Super Bowl. I guarantee they're not happy they didn't win the Super Bowl, and of course they're happy now. The team's sitting at 10-1, but I'm like, you lose in the Super Bowl. Nobody's sitting here saying, "Oh, we guarantee we're gonna be back next year." Not being realistic. You like to hope your team's gonna be back, but you don't know. So I'm like, you gotta win. But at the end of the day, I'm like, when you talk about quarterbacks like Josh Allen, I'm like, these are games I want us to go out there and show up big, because I'm like, this is where Dak Prescott is pretty much like stamping, like the guys like that have not done anything in the league, because if you watch national media, they're using it's kind of what say you talking about goalpost moving the goalposts on certain guys for X, Y. What we talking about? I think the clip kind of floating around with I didn't even watch it, but it was with Joy Taylor. Her MVP checklist is all over the place. It didn't make any sense, because we're talking about, she's saying Dak is not first in this. He's not first in this. You have to have this big time minute, this late game win, clutch gene. First of all, what I always hate now is just how, I guess you want to say, reality TV. And it's not even just NFL football. It's all sports now. You watch it. They turn every sport into like it's a reality TV show. And I hate it, because, again, I felt like you used to actually get people's valid opinions. Like, I really don't believe a lot of people believe what they're actually saying. They know it's business. That's why when you'll hear Stephen A. Smith and you hear the guys, they're on ESPN or FS1, whatever, and they're like, more so ESPN, we're talking about Stephen A. Smith. They had that whole montage talking about, why do we talk about the Cowboys? Because no one cares if we don't talk about nobody cares if we talk about anybody else. Why do we not why is Josh Allen not held to the same standard we're talking about Dak Prescott? Why do people feel that way? It's like, because when we do hold him to that standard, no one cares. They don't talk about what we said about Josh Allen. They talk about what we said about Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. So I'm like, they're going to say stuff about the Cowboys regardless, because they know Cowboys fan base is so big and so global anyway, whether it's good or bad. If people say something negative about the Cowboys, people are going to jump all over it. If people say something positive, people are going to jump all over it. So it's like, that's how business is.
For one more week, at least Dak is I mean, what are you gonna after everything? Joy Taylor's list comes out and stuff this week. Well, now what? Because she watched this game. They watched this game. Dak clutch. Everything. Kept us in the game. No interceptions. 3 touchdowns. RPOs. Talking smack. Like he handled his stuff. So it's like what?
I promise you. Go ahead and prepare yourself. It's gonna turn into. Dak Prescott should have taken advantage of the Seattle Seahawks way sooner in the game. The Dallas Cowboys settled for field goals on how many drives? That's exactly what it's going to turn into. So, the goalpost. That's why I tell people, I'm like, look, don't even worry about what the national media is saying, because at the end of the day, you're going to be looking up and seeing people just saying stuff just to say it anyway. And I'm like, so, because they know it's going to get clicks. People are going to disagree with it. People are going to comment on it, whatever it is. And I'm like, or people going to agree with it just because they don't like the Cowboys or Dak Prescott or whatever it is. So, I'm like, look, this was one of those. Like I said, we can go back into it a little bit. CeeDee Lamb, 12 catches, 116 yards tonight, 1 touchdown, 17 targets. They were talking about since what? What was it, since week 5, I believe, the 49ers game. I think they said he's averaging about, 7 catches? 7 targets a game, I think? 7 catches or 7 targets? I think it's 7 catches.
Since then, he's doubled that.
And I'm like, we are in the mix of, CeeDee Lamb. Now he did. I will say it. I always kind of say it when we're talking. It goes kind of that sense of kind of way I would always do Dez Bryant. I'm like, we do know the superstar level player he is, the talent he has. But then when you do see a bad drop or something like in a big game or a big time moment, just every now and then. It's not like happening regularly, but it's just if it happens, you're just kind of like. Obviously, I'm not going to get on you the same way I would Jalen Tolbert or I'm going to get on Michael Gallup or anything like that because, we see you make these plays all the time. But that 4th and 2, bad. And my thing is, it's not anything to harp on. But I'm like, you want to see CD come up with those because when you look up, sometimes, let's go deeper and deeper into it. The postseason, how many moments are like that in the postseason where it's 4th and 2. This game is in the balance right now. CD, we have 3 minutes left on the clock. It's 4th and 2. Yeah, it was a little, again, it wasn't even like a necessarily routine, completely catch. It's a guy of his skill set should be able to make that easily, but it wasn't like it's just easy. But Dak put that ball right where it needs to be without putting it in harm's way. It's like it's going to you or it's going to nobody. And it hits his hands. I'm like, CD has to come up with that just because I'm like.
It's first down regardless,
Yep, exactly. And I'm like,
I went in. Or the play call was sketchy. The ball was there, and it was a first down.
Yep.
And we weren't even going to be worrying about the defense on the field if we get that first down, the game's probably over.
Which is how I knew I shouldn't have done it because I'm like, we've being Cowboys fans for any period of time, a good period of time. I'm like, you never game's over because this thing is game was over. So I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm like, but I start feeling that confidence where okay, we're in the mix of being able to shut it down, close it down, but. Obviously, we're always gonna make it a little bit more difficult. Let the intensity go up a little bit longer. So I'm like, I just want to make sure. I'm like I said, just because now we are. I think it's the Eagles. Who comes after the Eagles? Is that the Bills?
Eagles.
Or is it the Dolphins?
Eagles, Bills, Miami, and then the last game's the Redskins. I think.
Commanders. And then I think the Lions right before that, right?
Yes. There's still 5 games.
Yeah, 5 games. So yeah, I'm like we're just now in the point of where. I think I said earlier. I said before the game. I was like, I want to see us to start to stack because at the end of the time, and when I say stack, I'm not even talking necessarily just wins. I'm like, just keep stacking on the pieces you're gonna try to add into this mix. Because again, I think Turpin. I think it was early in the game, wasn't it? Nice catch on. Was it 3rd and down? Puts on 1st and goal. It gives it a 1st and goal. I'm like, of course. That was, I think he had about 1 or 2 plays this whole game. But I'm like, when you get in that mix, I'm like, when you get to the postseason, or when you get to just, again, these bigger games as we go down this final stretch, now what's facing the Eagles next. And then, like I said, then the Bills and the Dolphins and the Lions. And then, so I'm like, when you get into those games, you're now at the point where you're just trying to find out, and I guess who can be key contributors to you as you keep on going. So I'm like,
the Lions game is going to be a huge one, too.
Yeah.
Second to last game, and the seeding is. I wouldn't be surprised if by the time we roll around to the Lions game where it's like, hey, if we win this game, we're going to be here. If we lose this game, we're going to be out here. We're still in the playoffs, but that game will determine who we play because the Commanders are probably going to rest guys anyway.
Yeah.
Because they'll be done.
Unless they treat it like they did last year. It's a matter of fact, you know what? I'm not sure that they're gonna rest anybody this year, especially what we did on Thanksgiving. That Thanksgiving game, I'm like, they cannot. Can you imagine the Commanders getting smacked like that on Thanksgiving and then just omitting the whole entire last week. They're like, nah. They said, if anything, we want to see if we can mess up the Cowboys seeding. We want to see if we can just kind of go out there and just be physical with them. Maybe even if it's not for seeding, go out there and just try to rough us up a little bit before the playoffs. It's like, hey, look.
But the Lions game will be big because that'll probably determine who we're playing even before the Commanders game. If we lose or win to them, it's going to be here or whatever.
Yep.
Because they're like the number 2 seed or something right now.
Who's the 2 seed? I think it is who is it?
It's the Lions. It's the Eagles.
Yeah, but we know Eagles are 1. Eagles 1.
Yeah.
Let me check it out. Yeah, I think we're gonna put
because the wild card is the Cowboys, the Vikings, and Seattle's still in it, so they're still a playoff team even after losing.
See,
so that narrative, they're still the playoff team even after they lose to us. So we beat a playoff team. We beat a team that was above 500.
Yep.
And I think if we have to play Minnesota, we should smoke them. I'm not worried about.
You don't worry about that at all.
But I mean, I think it's Philly, and then it's the Lions, right? And then us, and then the Vikings, and
yeah, the seeding right now. Yeah, I think playoff seeding. Here we go. Yeah, in the NFC, actually Philly is at 1, 10-1, and then the 49ers are at 2, 8-2,
and Lions 3,
8-3, and then of course the Falcons right now 5-6, leading the NFC South.
Yeah.
Way south. That's gonna be pretty much.
Well, what do we got to do to play Atlanta the first round? I'm down for that.
And let's see what the cards fall after that, man. Right now we're sitting at the 5th seed right now. So I'm not sure obviously how long the Vikings are going to be in the mix, because if they have more Josh Dobbs, you see what I think the report came out, they were looking to coach was looking to potentially take out Josh Dobbs in that game anyway. His last game.
He had 3 or 4 receptions, right?
Yeah, I think it was rough. So I'm like,
it's unfortunate because when Dallas plays early in the week, I don't usually tend to watch any other games.
Yeah.
I'll just watch it on my phone, or I'll keep it.
Track,
I've had multiple interceptions, and I was like,
4, and it was one of those games. I'm like, where you could tell, obviously. And my thing is, and again, that's the most annoying thing going back to the Arizona Cardinals game earlier this year with Josh Dobbs at quarterback. Yeah. He didn't do anything spectacular. It was just one of those games where we would just play behind on everybody. It wasn't even like, to me, I don't even feel like it was anything that even the Cardinals did. You just watched that game. I think Diggs had just gotten hurt in practice that Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday, whatever. So I'm like, that team, you could tell the team just came into that game still kind of just again, because now you're realizing you have an entire scheme. Like I said, going through training camp, Mike McCarthy, Dan Quinn, they all talk about our team is built on trying to play complementary football this year. That's why you saw that slow-paced, methodical, dink and dump offense the first few weeks of the season, because we're banking on our defense being so good that we just don't want to turn the ball over. If we don't turn the ball over, we're going to be good to go. And then all of a sudden, when you lose a player like Diggs, you kind of realize we're not going to be able to do this the exact same way we planned on doing this before. And to me, the biggest thing, I said, even to this day, of course, Micah Parsons, you can say the best player on your defense. But up to that point, Trayvon Diggs, it's to me, you can go into debate about who's the most impactful. And again, we talk about Micah Parsons. Of course, we obviously know he's very impactful. But I'm talking about for this team, and it could be 1A, 1B. But I'm like, Diggs to me has that, we're talking about that gene. Because I said last year, I think his interception went from 11 to 3 last year. But to me, I felt last year was his best year as a cornerback, like playing
more complete. Yeah.
Yes, playing the position. We're talking about not biting on every little double move. We're talking about actually just staying in phase with receivers. I'm talking about, like, you know what I mean? I'm like, just the small technical things that go with actually playing outside corner in the NFL. And I'm like, to me, Trayvon Diggs, he became an all-around corner, and just my expectations for throwing out that first 2 weeks, I think, against. Oh yeah, because he ended up with an interception late in that Jets game, I think. And but you're watching the way that we played. It was like there was no weakness, and you could watch it. Of course, you could talk about who the talent level of the quarterbacks were, but you watch that defense. There were not holes anywhere. And in a worst case scenario, because obviously we were running a completely different offense. If we were running an even bit of a more aggressive style offense early in this season, you're going to see some games that I think they would have gotten out of hand way more than they even did, because a lot of that was like, okay, making special teams plays, we're making plays on defense, and then we're scoring maybe a little here and there on offense. And I'm like, to me, I feel like if we were attacking, they would have been, again, what's the Cowboys' strength right now? Well, before tonight, your mindset is you want to get us in passing situations, because now you can let those pass rushers get after them. You want Deron Bland out there. You want guys to be able to make plays. So I'm like, when you still had Trayvon Diggs up there and just Bland playing your nickel corner, and Gilmore on the outside, he's not a pick artist, but he's a technical type defender at this point. When you get in those type situations, you're going to be able to look and say, there were no holes. And it just felt like there were no holes. Like, teams were going to be in trouble. And I'm like, I felt like still, when you lost a player like Diggs, now Bland is moved to outside, like normally. Like, that's what he's doing every single week now. And you have other guys kind of having to take some steps and maybe do a little bit something different than what they planned on. Because you don't realize, again, when you have a Diggs out there, he helps alleviate a whole lot of issues that you might have that you don't even actually show. Because how many times is the quarterback not even going to throw the ball up in that area just for the fact that he sees him over there? You know what I mean? It's like, hey, how many times have we seen Diggs in coverage with somebody else and the ball is in that area, he goes and gets it that way too? You know what I mean? And I'm like, so when you take a player like that off the field, quarterbacks are a little bit less scared to take those chances. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I think we're still a work in progress. I'm like, this also is going to be a thing I can see. I guess you want to say it is good now that we're playing like a little bit more difficult teams, because you are now going to be able to have no excuses.
Right. There's nothing wrong with being battle tested.
You're going to be battle tested, yeah.
People are, they want us to play these better teams. And of course, in the perfect world, you want to just blow out these better teams. But at the end of the day, that's just not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, yeah.
And some people some people want to see the blowouts, want to see the style points. Some people, which I lean towards that way, want to see a gritty, down and dirty, fighting claw win, because at the end of the day, that's what you take into the playoffs.
Yep.
It is knowing that, hey, when it gets down to the nitty gritty, can we fight? Can we scratch? Can we claw and win? Which we had to do tonight. You know.
Yep.
So tonight was a perfect example of, okay, here's a playoff team who's lost 2 in a row. They're hungry. We need to step it up, and we did. We have a lot. I mean, our defense, very frustrating for most of the game. Mm-hmm. Dak played out of his mind.
Yeah.
The offense was there. Offensive line had its well. So we had our flaws.
Yeah.
And we were still able to prevail. We didn't punt the ball at all. Like,
that's crazy.
No,
as I said, when was the last game there was not a team that punted the ball, like, at all? Yeah. Not even once.
I feel like we passed a lot more than we normally do. So I was surprised to see that, but we kind of had to. I mean, with Seattle just scoring at will, we had to abandon the run a lot. But we did what we had to do, man. And at the end of the day, sometimes you want to see those victories that are hard nosed. It's like, hey, we know we can get down to it if need be. Yes, is it nice to put up 45 every week? Mm-hmm. Of course, to each their own. But when it gets down to the playoffs, that's not going to happen. We're going to probably win a game or two in the playoffs or whatever by a field goal or something. You never know. You hope not, because it just makes it easier, less stressful.
Yep, exactly.
Playoffs. That's just how it's going to be. And we played a team today that some considered a trap game. Yep. Some didn't. But it was like, it definitely had the trap game vibes, only because Seattle was pretty desperate.
Yeah.
And they're going to we had to kind of turn it up a lot quicker probably than we wanted to, because we wanted to just end it from the beginning. And I thought we were. I mean, we went down the field, scored easily.
I'm thinking first drive. Okay, here, touchdown, and we're gonna start. It's gonna start stacking. But yeah, go ahead.
Then our defense just disappears, and no pressure, and then no help over the top. And I was like, okay, weird. And then Terrence Still's doing his thing, which is not good. And Dak has to do a couple of Houdini things, which is great. That's what you want to see from a quarterback.
Yep.
A couple RPOs. Our offense saved the defense today. The defense stepped up at the last minute, which is great. But to me, that's not going to erase everything they did. We got lucky. The last play was a fluke play by Seattle. They just kind of gave up, I guess.
Yeah. Mike's breathing down your throat. Yep.
They're not off the hook. I'm not sure what's happening, because the last couple of weeks there's been a little bit of wishy-washy things. But this game, it exposed a lot, and I hope. Look, against Philly, it's just like, nope, we're gonna make them think this is what we're doing, but we're gonna do something completely different, and then maybe that's how we get the upper hand and win.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, we're not even used to this defense. They're actually doing things different.
See, and what I think to me personally will probably help us the most in that Eagles game is the simple fact that obviously that again we've been known this about a month and a half now, maybe a month, a little more than a month. This is completely Dak Prescott's offense. Like completely, I'm talking about where there's not okay. We're kind of focused on this. This is Dak Prescott running the show, and you can tell again. We're talking about even coming to the line and making so many checks and calls. Not even just like, hey, you know what? Me and Mike McCarthy, Brian Schottenheimer, all of us as a committee are like figuring out this game plan. It's like no, you can tell within the game. Mike McCarthy will kind of have his calls. Brian Schottenheimer is over there a little bit, but you'll see when they get out there actually on the field. This is Dak Prescott's team. He's free to open up. We're talking about sending guys in motion. He did a couple times in the game, especially I think it was a third quarter, I believe, mid to late third. You see him sending Jake Ferguson out in motion, bringing him back in. And again, you're trying to check your coverage. You're trying to see what they're disguising. Right. And I'm like, this is where you're watching him play. And like, he's actually playing the quarterback position, not just being out there because of course you can say guys get out there and have a big arm. Like, look, with Geno Smith, I think early in the game, he only had like 8 completions and he already had about 155 or something like that yards complete. Right. I mean, yards total pass. And I was like, a lot of them obviously came off that big 73-yard chunk touchdown to DK. So I'm like, it's not always stats. Stats can show sometimes, they can show not. But if you're actually watching the game, that's why we're going to people that are just actually football fans and not the fan of the narratives and the fan of the hot takes. You're watching the actual game. Dak Prescott is just playing quarterback. You know what I mean? Right. Like, he's controlling the show. And I'm like, to me, that's going to be our best calling card. Going into the Eagles game, we already know. Again, you can't ever say nobody's going to have a bad game because it's the NFL. Things happen. But at the same time, we've seen Dak have many, many great games against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm like, we have got to just come in there because one thing the Eagles are going to do is always try to keep you all balanced. Jalen Hurts, regardless of what anybody thinks about Jalen Hurts, I'm talking about as the quarterback. You're talking about just the quarterback. I'm like, he's always going to be one of those guys that you feel like he can do something on a broken play. And I'm like, our defense cannot continue. That's the biggest issue I think I have with our front four more so. I'm talking because of course you have the way Dan Quinn employs our pass rushing. You have guys because I think later on in the last couple of drives, I believe defensively, he had guys standing up because you would see we getting beat up. Everybody has their hand in the dirt all game and getting beat completely because I was saying it's like it's easy to kind of for an O lineman, especially to kind of put a body on just a man right across from him. But I'm like, now you're standing guys up, you can kind of mix and match because he does it. He stunts with Micah a lot anyway. So I'm like, now you start mixing matching other guys like Dante Fowler's out there. You know what I mean? Sam Williams, DeMarcus Lawrence. I'm like, you're doing that. We have got to keep our containment. We do that so many times this season. It's like we over pursue to the point where we run ourselves out of plays.
Or we run into each other behind the quarterback.
And it's like Jalen Hurts is going to tear us up with that. And I'm like, that's why I'm talking. We're just getting the detail. This thing, I think, especially they usually probably get the rest of this week off. I would think so.
Yeah.
When you get the rest of this week off, when you get back in the lab, y'all get back to the star. This is gonna be where you're now just saying we need to focus on detail. Like, yeah, we played all these weaker opponents, and we kind of just live off that. We're gonna pretty much take our chances that somebody's gonna just make a bad throw. Somebody's gonna get flustered and they see Micah Parsons or Dorrance Armstrong or Dante Fowler or somebody coming at them. Of course, you're gonna start just force the ball up, and you have guys that are gonna make plays on the ball. I'm like, but when you're playing the better teams, they're focused on attention to detail. You know what I mean? So you're going to have to do the same thing. I'm like, so I'm hoping Dan Quinn get in there, have them locked in. I'm talking about just on detail. Like, yeah, we know y'all can make plays. That's not going to help us because everybody's trying to make a play at the same time.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what we talk about. Football is like the ultimate team sport. One guy doesn't do his job, that can completely throw off the entire unit. You know what I mean? So I'm like, it feels like sometimes we have so many guys trying to hunt sacks and hunt getting the quarterback, and you looking up and you're like, yeah, you're trying to hunt the quarterback, but obviously you're supposed to go through this gap. You end up cutting back to this gap because you think it's an easier play for you to make the play for yourself. And now what you do, like you said, you run into your teammate. Now you now you have to throw each other completely off. And you have guys like Jalen Hurts. He's just picking up first downs as he goes. You know what I mean? Or a big play. So yeah, we're going to have to this in, man.
This defense tonight, it needs to be gone. And of course, we have to watch the 49er game just for film reasons, or to discuss. But I think a couple of days extra rest is, of course, much needed. Philly's going to have a normal week.
Yep.
Because Sunday to Sunday, of course, they're coming to our house.
Yep.
We got the 14-game win streak, so they have a lot. They're probably going to have a lot to play for.
Yep.
Because they're going to want to beat us and break that, blah blah blah. And
yeah.
our game plan against Philly is always so unpredictable because for some reason, well, not for some reason, we show up, So it's hard to say, okay, well, maybe now this is going to be the defensive game and the Dak, but the way our offense is balling, I'm not gonna put any bad juju on the offense. Our offense has been holding it down when our defense hasn't exactly been as good as they were last year.
Yeah.
No digs, of course, but still the sacks aren't really there. The pressures tonight, I can tell you, I mean, we probably had 2 or 3 blitzes all night, and of course, when we did, that's how we win the game because we blitzed.
Yeah.
I don't think we blitzed Geno much at all.
Not enough. I think, like I said, and again, I think I always kind of felt like it was in the sense of where I think to me, I felt like Dan Quinn just overthought a lot of this game. Yeah. I feel like we kind of went away from what our normal, I guess, positives are, more so especially on the defensive side of the ball. Went away from what our positives are, and he's overthinking. Of course, hey, they have DK Metcalf out here. They have Tyler Lockett out here. Hey, they have Jackson Smith and Jigba. You know what I mean? And I'm like, when you're doing that and you're kind of overthinking what you guys are good at, you have to trust in y'all's talent sometimes. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, ask yourself one thing. We can go back to Wade Phillips, and I'm talking about Wade Phillips before he even got to the Cowboys. Wade Phillips when he was with the Chargers defensive coordinator. They had Sean Merriman and all those guys. Wait, yeah, you go through all those. When you have those mentality, you would see how he would play defense. Especially that was at 3-4, that super pass rush 3-4. They were aggressive. Obviously, you have Antonio Cromartie, guys like that out there. So I'm like, but they played aggressively. And you will watch it, it will be like relentless where you just keep going. We talking about Rex Ryan with the Ravens. It's like they just come at you all game over and over. You do that, and if you feel like you're good at that, you have to trust in it. You know what I mean? Because at the same time, you have to believe in your defense. Hey, you know what? We can force you into some mistakes because we're that good.
I'm not sure. Whatever the game plan was tonight, I'm not sure the there was a lot of guys, single, man coverage, single coverage, 10 yards off the ball, but no help over the top side. I hate getting to that point where it's like, yes, the defense won the game technically, but at the same time, we had to do a hell of a lot more, I feel like, on offense because of the way the defense was playing. And they stepped up when needed, but at the same time, it shouldn't have gotten to that point. It should have been, we shouldn't have to have been as nervous as we were. And I know it's going to happen, but I feel like the defense was just like letting them stick around. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like get some help over the top, play press.
Yeah.
Single coverage, cool, but 20 yards off the ball, no help over the top.
Yeah.
With a guy who already has 3 touchdowns. And so I just hope this is just a game plan where it's like, hey, let's pretend this is what we're going to do. Hopefully Philly bites. Switch it all up when Philly comes in. So
see, and I'll even give Dan Quinn kind of the same benefit of the doubt. I'll give a player every single now. Yeah. I'll say, look, let's just say it just might have been a bad week. It's like, hey, you know what? For some reason, I don't even feel like Seattle was calling much better plays than us. I'm saying to keep us off track or keep us off guard. But it'd be like, hey, you know what? I just did not have my best stuff and mentally calling this game last night. So just throw that. Like I said, just put that in the dirt. But I want to go to real quick. Like you said, you talking about the postseason, how close these games are. This is like perfect time for this team to be battle tested.
Yeah, of course.
Let's talk about.
I love the style points early when we can take them early in the season. Mm-hmm. But towards the end, it's like, okay, let's sprinkle in a couple of field goal games, overtime games, nitty-gritty games. It builds character. It's good for the mental health, knowing that we could take a team,
Everything's not always going to be a blowout, and we can still get a game. Yeah. See, as I said, going into that, you're talking about field goal games. Brandon Aubrey, 4-4 tonight, man. 4-4 tonight. I believe, 3 of 3 on extra points. Now sitting at 26 of 26 in his NFL career. This is obviously, we know what we used to have with Dan Money Bailey, healthy Dan Money Bailey. It was consistency. We knew, hey, look, if we need a big kick or we have a big moment, you can believe in that. You can trust in it. And then obviously the injury started, unfortunately, to rack on him a little bit. And then so we've been in limbo a little bit trying to figure out, okay, who's our next guy? We know the Brett Maher experience multiple times. So
Greg
Zuerlein, exactly what used to be Greg the Leg. Now we're like, but Brandon Aubrey, this is like, and again, coming into the offseason, obviously we saw, I talk about it all the time, especially his earlier videos. We're going through I was going through preseason. I'm not preseason, training camp, mini camp, training camp. Of course, what was it? Tristan Vizcaino. We had him in here. All of a sudden, you have who are some of the guys on the mend for guys that were possibly going to be available. Talking about Mason Crosby, like guys like that. You know what I mean? This off season. And of course, we bring in a Brandon Aubrey, a Tristan Vizcaino, and Brandon Aubrey is not kicking well. Tristan Vizcaino is not kicking; he's kicking worse. So he's gone, and then now all of a sudden we get in the reins. They never bring in a veteran, and you hear we're going to let Brandon Aubrey see what he can do. And I'm like, so I'm kind of nervous, but I'm going to give benefit of the doubt because at the end of the day, it's like when you realize
missing kicks in the preseason, he was missing kicks.
It was missing kicks. So, and again, it was like to me, I'm like. It felt like maybe that was just his way of working out the kinks himself. You know what I mean? Yeah. So where you're not having to kind of, but then again, like somebody said, they were like, I was talking to friends earlier, like I just probably talking about doing the training camp process in preseason, and he's like, look, if maybe he'll be a little bit more comfortable because he's the only one now. And some guys that actually does work. I don't know if it's the competition that throws him off or just the uncertainty. I guess especially talking about this is his rookie year, first year in the league at least. I think 25.
It is, yeah.
But it's first year in the league, and I'm like, some guys, I feel like maybe they just get a little bit more comfort when they know they're the only one. Like, hey, I'm just trusting that you're gonna get the job done, so you kind of can just lock in. And I'm like, from this point on, I was like, I think what's his long this year? I believe his long.
I thought it was last week.
58. Yeah, 58 yarder. 58 yarder this year, yeah. So I'm like, when you just look at him and he's kicking with so much confidence and like you're getting yourselves into these situations where I remember, especially talking about even Brett Maher, we know he can make the 68, 69, 80-yard field goal, but then he might go up there and miss a 38-yarder. And I'm like, and you have a guy like that, you get into these situations where you say, look, you know what? Think about the point when we end up kicking the field goal just to bring it back within 35-30. That was big because if we don't get that, if he comes out there and misses that field goal, now you look up and you're still down 27-35, and you can't let them score again because if you do, it's a wrap. You know what I mean? Even a field goal. So I'm like, when you're looking at that mix of being able to kind of go out there and just kick that and again, just be consistent. That's why I said the biggest thing. That's what I think I can give him the most credit for. Is Brandon Aubrey kind of just kept us in the mix in this game when we weren't really rolling. Because again, if anything, it does make the Seahawks. It's not a touchdown, but it makes the Seahawks realize they still have to stay locked in, because it's easy. If you come out there, you see the Cowboys kicker out there missing just field goals. Okay, you know what? It's still a 2-possession game. We don't have to really stress now. But when you look up and like, okay, well, we're only up 5 now. We still you have to keep that mental toughness. And sometimes that's when you overthink it to the point that you force yourself into a mistake. So I'm like, Brandon Aubrey, that's just a big, big sign. I'm glad he's still kicking well. Like I said, I'm kind of giving him more and more praise as the weeks go on because I said you kind of are still waiting to see. Okay, let's see if he doesn't get those. Wasn't Jerry Jones called them the yips? You want to get those yips where you're just thinking, hey, you know what like we saw Mike Vanderjagt get when we got him years ago. And I'm like, those guys, they're great, and all of a sudden, but when they lose their confidence, it's a wrap because now you overthink everything. And I said most of the time, obviously, you have the talent. But mental, in football in general, in mental, you lose that mental, you fall all off. Which, again, goes back to why Deron Bland, although he had the terrible game overall, what we're going to compare it to, it was good to, again, see guys like that be able to just stick with the script.
Yeah, and he got his interception, so it's not like, he has something to take home now. It's like, I was not too good, but I got a pick.
Exactly, yeah. Got to wrap it up nicely.
He has something to hang his hat on, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And then I think we had opportunity for the last one, which I'm glad he didn't get because it essentially would have pinned us back in our own territory. So I said, I'm glad he didn't come up with that 9th interception, which just sounds crazy already. We're about 4 games left, 4 or 5 games. We're talking about 8 interceptions already on the season.
Yeah.
So a guy again, just a team win. You can't complain too much. I mean, you can, but obviously, just at the end of the day, we're talking about being able to playing back-to-back Thursday night games.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain ever about winning. I'm just going to nitpick a couple things.
Nitpick the details. Yeah, exactly.
No, it's a win, baby. It was ugly. For one side, it was ugly. We had to do what we had to do. Yeah. I'm never going to be upset about a win, but I will be like, whatever this defense was, I'm not really too excited about that.
Not the trajectory. Yeah, I think, you know what? I think it's going to be some. I don't think some mixing around again. Hopefully, like I said, what Shaq Leonard said he expects to make his decision this weekend. Hopefully, the defense didn't scare him off this weekend with this. So we'll see. but that, like you were saying, I think if you bring in a guy like that, to me, that's just gonna solidify. We're talking about just veteran leadership, if anything. Because sometimes one thing I will say, well, I think they said we're the top two. The Seahawks and Cowboys are the top two most penalized teams in the entire NFL coming into tonight. And I mean, neither one of us helped those numbers in this game. So I'm like, when you go back to that, you're gonna hope. Sometimes when you're just watching this, I'm like, it's not like we don't have the players. Obviously, it's just the discipline. And having that guy that's kind of been out there so long, he understands those small details. Which is why, again, he wasn't a splash player at this point. But when we got it was Anthony Barr, again, some veteran leadership. You know what I mean?
Yep. So, he helped enough. He did what he had to do.
Yep, he did. He did just enough. Go back to.
I think Shaq Leonard will be a pretty good contributor. You see the game tonight. You see us at home. It's exciting. The environment's great.
Yep.
You're gonna watch Seattle. Maybe it's not as fancy or whatever you're looking for. It's like, well, I'm gonna go down to Dallas. I got a home winning streak. Yeah. The fans are good. Yep. So.
Yeah, you can't complain too much about that at all. Like I said, a win is a win. We'll take it how we get it. Real quick, Bobby Wagner, 33 years old, 14 tackles, and I believe they said he had 10 tackles, I think, before halftime or by halftime.
Yep.
A guy we look for, Jamal Adams, leads the second in tackles with 10 for the Seattle Seahawks tonight. For the Dallas Cowboys, leading tackles, Marquise Bell, Deron Bland behind him with 6 tackles. He had lots of action tonight.
That's why.
Like I said, but this is one of those games. Like I said, we didn't come away with, I believe, what Jonathan Hankins, I think, has our only on record sack for the night. So when you now, I think he has 3 sacks in 2 games. So those are some of those he's looking up and happened to be in the right place at the right time. But I'm like I said, overall, it was a game where offense obviously did the heavy lifting compared to what we're used to from the defensive side of the ball. The defense did a little bit what they could at the end of the game in the last couple drives. I mean, whatever. I mean, like I said, it wasn't a good game, but they kind of finalized it. Real quick. Brandon Cooks, 4 catches, 45 yards, touchdown. I just want to throw him in real quick before we start hitting that finish line. He is a guy that I'm just glad he's finally being used for what we brought him for,
Right.
Because obviously we talk about preseason training camp. The plan is just to kind of get Dak Prescott as many weapons in open spaces as he can, but we didn't obviously even get to really see it much, because I will say it's crazy. If you go watch that earlier season film, there were so many the ball's out of Dak's hands by maybe the 3rd drop step. I'm saying quickly. And you look up, and we're talking about whether it's dumping the ball off to Tony Pollard, quickly to CeeDee Lamb, quickly to Brandon Cooks. Nobody was able to really make plays because we weren't letting them progress. And Brandon Cooks is a guy that stretches the field too much for you to be having him in a phone booth. So I'm just glad to be able to see him get more work. 4 catches, like I said, 45 yards, a touchdown. Jalen Tolbert, another nice sideline clutch catch for the Cowboys. Yeah. Did it again.
Yeah, the one where Steele messed up and Dak
had to work around. Yeah, that. Exactly. Yep, exactly. Like I said, so tonight, just a team win. That's the best way to describe it. I mean, we can't really.
100%. No, it's you want an ugly team win sometimes. That's just how the cookie crumbles, man.
Yep.
It's be ugly.
Yep.
You got to just support it. You don't have to embrace it, because you'd rather the wins in the games be easy, but at the same time you got to support it, because it's like, hey, this was a tough. I don't care what anyone says. Yes, they lost 2 straight, but Seattle, it's in the playoff hunt. They're desperate. You don't want to lose 3 straight this late into the season.
Yep.
They were hungry. They were desperate. The lights were on, and they showed up, and they showed out, and we got the upper hand, and that's what I tip my cap at the end of the day.
There we go. Exactly. Did we have to do? The Dallas Cowboys' next opponent will be the Philadelphia Eagles on December 10th. It will be a 7:20 p.m. game if they start on time. You know how those go. Those NBC Sunday Night Football games. We will be back next game. We will have another post. We're going to do this from now on. We're going to continue to build the channel, continue to grow the channel. This is my guy Ryan right here. He is going to be a regular, so we're going to be here all the time. Of course, we're going to hope we're going to keep it positive. We're going to hope the rest of this regular season goes well. Hope that we can hopefully have a nice solid playoff run this year and finally be able to put some of those old demons behind us. But like I said, this channel is going to continue to grow. We're going to keep on pushing. Of course, obviously, so as an off season, things like that go. The NFL draft, that's going to be an every year thing. So we're going to be here for all that. We appreciate you guys for all the support. Like I said, the Dallas Cowboys did take down the Seattle Seahawks tonight. Dallas Cowboys 41, the Seattle Seahawks 35. That is going to be it for us tonight, guys. Like I said, we will be back December 10th post game for Eagles versus Dallas Cowboys. Sunday Night Football at Cowboy Stadium at Jerry's World. So we appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, share. Keep pushing the channel. We appreciate you guys as always. And also, as always, go Cowboys.
Let's get it.
Peace.